Yes, I think I'll have the Flektogon. Today's video is going to be about the Carl Zeiss Flektogon 2.4. Continuing on from the Flektogon investigation, where we look at both Flektogons side by side to see if there's any difference, today I'm going to do the same thing but look at closer focusing shots, things from between 20 centimeters and 3 meters. And the first shot is going to be open wide, and it's my snowman decoration because it's a festive season. And why not? The first thing I can see is that where I've focused the camera is this area here, right between the eyes. I can see that the red one looks a little bit sharper. Now, the white one, because we're looking at a white background, it looks like there's a slight magenta tone or tint to the white Flektogon. Well, that could be because of the shutter speed differences, because I'm trying to get a kind of balanced picture. I don't want it to be too dark or too light, so I'm adjusting them. Perhaps I should, perhaps I shouldn't, I'm not sure. But there's definitely a bit more contrast, I think, in the red one. Now look at this. The green, dark green areas there, and the dark red cherries on there. They're not cherries, are they? I suppose they're holly. But the colour is more realistic on the red one, I think. You can see here the white snowman. It's not really white on the white side. You can see I'm open wide. The bokeh balls are huge and round. The bokeh itself, though, seems to be more creamy on the white side. There seems to be a little bit of detail, splodges and patches in the red side. But what's going on here? Can you see this? Which one's sharper? Now, that was interesting. I think for a moment we saw that the white Flektogon seemed sharper. Let's stop it down to f8 and continue. So, as you'd expect, f8 and everything's nice and sharp. The colours look very similar. There is a speed difference, a very, very slight speed difference. And that tint, that magenta tint on the white side is still there. So it seems to me that that's a quality of the lens. But what's interesting, though, is my point of focus. You see, the white Flektogon here looks sharper. And the interesting thing is that it was in between the eyes over here. That's where I focused on both shots. So the Flektogon on the white side Flektogon seems to be focusing a little bit different. You can see I'm stepped down because of these hexagon-shaped fairy lights in the background. Now everything's fairly sharp, but something is happening. There is something going on here with the focusing. Now, could the Nikon's green dot be the reason why these are slightly focused differently? Let's have a look at it close up and see if we can see anything else that might give something away. So I'm about 20 centimeters from the camera, and this thing that you're looking at is a pine cone. We're just really close. Overall, I think there's more contrast in the red Flektogon at the moment, but the red Flektogon, the shutter speed is a lot faster than the white side. Red one is 80th of a second, and the white one is 25th of a second. So there's a bit of a difference. And I think that's because the clouds were passing outside. The light was changing while I was working the shot. But look at this. Both of these areas here look exactly the same. They look just as sharp. Now the white Flektogon, there's an area there where I can see these little hexagon shapes. Now what those are tiny little pieces of glitter. And they look just as sharp which is interesting. Now, this is the thing I'm getting at. The thing I want you to notice now is the plane of focus. Now, you can see that one is definitely blurry and one is sharp, but on the white Flektogon, you can see that the tip of the pinecone there is a lot blurrier, but yet the little shards of glitter, they're just as sharp as the red Flektogon's glitter. And what's happening is that the field of vision is slightly different. Now, the depth of field is different. You see, on the red side, we have more depth of field, and on the white side, we have less. And that's why it appears sharper on the red side. So it looks like it could be the Nikon's green dot system that's affecting focus. Or it could be that one lens has a better depth of field than the other. So this is f8, looking at the pinecone. And as you'd expect, everything that we can see here is in focus. And I think everything's just as sharp. Now, when we're looking at infinity focus, everything should, the depth of field should be quite long. So I don't know quite at the moment. I'm not really sure what's going on, but I think it has something to do with the depth of field and with the focusing dot on the Nikon. Because when you think about the manual focusing, the Nikon is looking for the difference between contrast. And when it gets a nice area where something looks sharp, that's when it starts flashing the green dot. But there is a play in that area. You can still move the focus just a touch left and right. Now, could it be that if I approach the focus from the right, I get a different effect than approaching the focus from the left? Now, that's a possibility. And I'll need to make a completely separate video to really look into that. But I think it definitely has an effect. Now, both these lenses seem to be just as sharp as each other when we're looking and comparing at them with the close-up shots. So I think it's become it's become clear that it's not the lenses itself that is softer or sharper. It's the depth of field that's slightly different. Now these, of course, they weren't designed to sit on a Nikon, a modern Nikon. And I think the way that the focusing works on the modern Nikons is that they're looking for sharpness in the actual JPEG, in the actual dots. Now, when you autofocus with the modern lens, it's using a different kind of system. So it may be because of that. But there's definitely a magenta tint to the white Flektogon. They've both got multi-coated lenses, but for some reason you can definitely see the shade difference. Now, the interesting thing about this shot that you may not be aware of is that the details are exactly the same. It's 100 ISO, the shutter speed is 40th of a second, and they're both exactly the same. So you can definitely see a slight tint on this side here. It's nothing to do with the shutter speed. Let's look at f8 and see if there's any more changes. So f8 didn't work out so well. I needed to adjust the shutter speed because there are other factors in play. The light from outside coming through the window changing, so I've had to change that. But you can definitely see that the both images look quite sharp. It would have been nice to have the same speed on both of these, and I think I should have kept them the same. I'm sorry I didn't. I don't know why I didn't. But the difference between the shots, I wanted to make them equal. You know, they're not equal because they react differently to the light. Now, both shots look okay. I think they look sharp enough. But which one? Which one would you choose if you had to choose? Which Flektogon is your favourite? I did like the white, but if I had to choose, would I choose the red? I don't know. I'm very undecided. And that's why these little investigations are important, because there's always a difference. So what do you think about all of this? I mean, we've looked at this thing from a infinity focus perspective, and then we've taken another close look at the close focusing ability of the Flektogon on the Nikon, and we've seen some pros and we've seen some cons, and we've seen some differences between two very similar lenses. Now, there's been some peculiarities, and I think there probably will be with every lens. Every lens you try out is going to be slightly different. You get good lenses and bad lenses, even if they're exactly the same make, especially with the vintage ones. So it's sometimes difficult to say whether it's one thing or another. I think generally it produces nice images, fairly sharp. But there was instances where the white Flektogon was clearly not as sharp as the red one. Now, I still don't know whether generally these Flektogons should be sharper, because I've only got two and I've only used two to experiment. So perhaps you might find a different result. But I found it interesting with the depth of field and how when I focus in the same place with a different lens, we have a slightly different plane of focus or field of focus. Now that really was a little bit interesting. And I also found that the lenses being exactly the same, identical really, from a technical perspective, that they perform differently to the light. And I know I should have done more experimentation with the lenses at exactly the same speed, shutter speed, but to give you the same kind of balanced pictures so that they looked pretty much the same, I did have to adjust them. And looking back, I think I shouldn't have done that. I should have just produced what I got rather than try to compensate. But some of the images were quite dark if I would have done that, and it wouldn't have been a fair comparison because we would have lost a lot of detail. There would have been I don't know, something like a bias, I think, a bias towards the brighter lens. And I didn't really want that, because I wanted to really compare the sharpness and the overall quality rather than distract with a dull image. I know some of the images are already quite dull and dark, but I think what I'm going to do to end the video is brighten these images up, tidy them up, and then just show them at the end. And I think that's it. This is the end. So I'm going to stick a few of these images after processing them on Photoshop or something, because of course the images that you've seen so far haven't been post-processed. They're just out of the camera and onto the screen, and nothing has been done to change them, which is essential really if you're viewing images like this for a crit. Anyway, so if you've liked the video, if it was useful, if it was interesting, hit that like, subscribe, because there'll be more content like this over the next few weeks, I suppose, while I'm interested in lenses at the moment. So let's have a look.